Ladies and gentlemen, after 3 rounds, we go to the judges' scorecards for decision. All 3 judges scored this contest 30-26 for the winner by unanimous decision, Mike the Truth Jackson.
Welcome back to the JM Report. I'm your host, GoodOlJM, episode 12 on the air, coming to you from CSB Studios in Tampa, Florida, the birthplace of pro wrestling. And as you just heard, unfortunately, a tough loss for CM Punk last Saturday night at UFC 225 versus Mike Jackson, The Truth, not to be confused with Ron Killings or K-Quick or R-Truth, or I think that's about it. But I'll have more thoughts about this later on. There's just so much to cover at this time and a little time to do it. So, yeah, let's get right into it. So, Ronda Rousey has been announced for a UFC Hall of Fame induction to take place on July 5th in Las Vegas. And first of all, congratulations are in order. I mean, it's almost difficult to say. I know for some people it won't be, but had it not been for Ronda Rousey, there probably would not have been any kind of women's division in any weight class in the UFC. I mean, yes, I'm aware there were women's divisions in other brands, but in a time where, or during a time I should say, where UFC was basically collecting or monopolizing other brands, other companies like Strikeforce, among others. And Ronda was very successful there, undefeated, and entering UFC undefeated up until her last 2 matches. Obviously didn't end so well for her. But in the argument there is UFC alone, because for some reason, no one thought a women's division in the UFC would work, even though it's been established elsewhere. So here comes Ronda Rousey, a house on fire. That's probably the only thing you haven't heard in a while. And not only undefeated, not only an Olympian, but a tremendous ass kicker. She took on all comers, in some occasions more than once, winning the bantamweight UFC championship, and took on all comers from all different styles. And at the end, it usually took an armbar. I think the majority of her victories were with the armbar submission, or it was a referee stoppage. But either way, she was a force to be reckoned with. And that recognition alone, that accomplishment alone, deserves a Hall of Fame induction. Kind of selfish for me to say this, but a little too soon. But it's not like she's in her 50s or 60s or beyond at this point. I mean, if the case is true that she decides never again to step into an MMA cage or an octagon, if you will, and this will be her last hurrah in that environment at the Hall of Fame, then I guess better now than never. And I'm really excited. I'm very happy for her. I know her and the family, her friends are ecstatic about this announcement. And connections with WWE, well, you have some of the well, they're not haters. Maybe the marks, but even then, that's a term I'd rather not use. But it's the only way to describe in the pro wrestling world and know who and what you're talking about. But many are speculating among the pro wrestling universe that explains why Ronda's getting such a quick title match at Money in the Bank this Sunday with Nia Jax for the Raw Women's title. Speculations of Ronda winning the title on the very first chance, opportunity, a try, and later on, of course, bragging rights at the UFC Hall of Fame with a WWE championship. So it's been no secret UFC and WWE are competitive companies, regardless of what, especially Vince McMahon would say. Dana White, he loves the competition. He doesn't take it personal. Between Vince and Dana, I think Dana's more of a laid-back guy in comparison as far as personality and how he conducts business. Not that Vince never has or couldn't be, but there's a more of a serious level there for Vince. And you know, and it's not nothing like, I mean, I never met the man. I don't know him personally, but just on going on other stories that people have shared, you know, for example, Bruce Pritchard had something to wrestle with, and Jim Cornette, Paul Heyman, among others. It's almost as if he's trying to give out this, it's my way of the highway persona, but it's not like that. It's just that's how he takes himself, not only himself serious, but his business, because it's a family business. The WWE is even before it was still a federation, after buying it out from his father. And had Vincent Sr. still be with us, who knows what his thoughts would be right now of how the changes his son has done to the business, for the good or the better or the worse. But it's not even a power play. I'm just going on what the rumor mills are going, the whispers in the wind, so to speak. No pun intended there for Jeff Hardy. But this is what a lot of fans have been tweeting out or Facebook posting, the speculations, the connection between the two events that are going to take place almost a few weeks from each other. And personally, I say, what's the problem? I mean, seriously, what is the problem? I mean, if the argument is that you having Ronda Rousey appearing at the UFC Hall of Fame ceremony with a WWE Women's Championship over her shoulder or around her waist, if that's your argument, then, I mean, you really haven't been paying that much attention, in a sense where there really aren't any more imaginary lines to cross, or any kind of a taboo, if you will. I mean, both companies have acknowledged each other here and there. Of course, back in the 90s, and this is even before Dana White's time as president. If you remember, Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler would actually promote upcoming UFC pay-per-views, and this is when Ken Shamrock was a big deal. And right when Dan Severn came over. And that went on for a little while. I don't remember, I didn't watch too much UFC back then because it was banned for a long time, or it was just airing too late at night, usually 10, 11 o'clock, which is the time now. But for a kid back then growing up in the 90s, it wasn't easy because you had school the next day. This is before or around the time they started to have Saturday pay-per-views. But point being, it really isn't no big deal. And just imagine the visual of a current WWE superstar who happened to compete with the UFC being inducted into their Hall of Fame as a champion now, and making her acceptance speech and receiving, honestly, I don't know what they receive, the Hall of Famers, whether it's a plaque or a ring. I'm not quite too sure. But just displaying whatever it is from the UFC with the WWE Women's title in this case, at the same time with one person that's basically in between the two companies, not for a business transaction or to see who's going to win her contract or anything like that, but it's just that be in the position of where she used to work with and where she's working now. And they coexist. Not to mention that they're two different types of businesses. So it's just how it is. And I just don't understand this argument or this complaining that's going on online. But get over it. It's been done before, maybe not at this capacity, but not too long ago when the WWE wanted to induct the Four Horsemen, making Ric Flair a 2-time Hall of Famer, which I really hope they don't do much of. But Flair was working for TNA at the time, Impact Wrestling. And there was some kind of agreement between the two sides. If you give us Flair, we'll give you, who do you want? And for reasons, TNA decided to go with Christian. And it's been shared later on after the fact. Christian didn't want to do it. He didn't want to go. What was it, for their Slammiversary pay-per-view, I believe? And at that point, it was maybe a couple of years that Christian has left TNA and made a return on that pay-per-view. And Flair was over at WWE celebrating with his Four Horsemen. And it may not have been an even exchange to a degree, no disrespect there, but I mean, the fans are going to argue anyway. And the fact that Christian didn't want to do it to begin with, but he knew business was business, and, he did what he had to do. But it's been done before, where one is acknowledging the other. You show up to the competitor's show, legally that is, and just make everyone happy. And honestly, I think that's the whole point of all this, is making everyone happy at the end of the day, especially on July 5th, after Ronda Rousey is making her acceptance speech for the UFC Hall of Fame. The modern wing, by the way. Let's be specific. And I believe that's their way of showing or acknowledging that, yes, she's still young. It's relatively, really short notice. Not short notice, but it was announced really quickly. And Ronda just left the UFC not too long ago, about a year or so. And now she's with WWE, and I'm sure there was a few phone calls made. Everybody agreed, and on July 5th, hopefully, more than likely, they're going to be WWE cameras there. They have to be, if they're going to make another Ronda Rousey autobiography or biopic, if you will, for their network. And we will all see. And I'm hoping this is streamed live on all platforms with UFC and WWE, so that way everyone will get an opportunity to see Ronda getting the recognition she's deserved. Now, she always has, but, at a Hall of Fame level, you can't beat that. Noam Dar is set to return real soon to 205 Live. He and Drew Gulak. I've said it before, maybe not here, but Drew Gulak is probably the best heel name I've ever heard. And he's a beast for a cruiserweight. He's a beast. But Noam Dar, who's been off television due to injury, is set to return real soon. And speaking of cruiserweights, not that he's ever been considered one or even competed on the 205 Live division, but a real crazy rumor/story involving James Ellsworth. Now, at first, early in the week, it was reported by PW Insider that the former WWE superstar will return to the company at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view in Chicago, Illinois. Ellsworth has been competing around the world with other independent promotions and defending his intergender championship, a la Andy Kaufman. And a handful of creative ideas have been suggested regarding his return, and he is indeed stated to be at Money in the Bank. Ellsworth could well interfere in the Carmella Asuka championship match, given his close association with the champion throughout the WWE tenure. However, a wrestling promotion in China, and this was about a day and a half after this was announced, a wrestling promotion in China released a statement saying that James Ellsworth has pulled out of a scheduled appearance this coming weekend, the same weekend as Money in the Bank, for Middle Kingdom Wrestling. There were promotional posters and announcements online of James Ellsworth's appearance for, at first MKW had promotional posters and announcements about this weekend's match with James Ellsworth defending his intergender championship. But now all of a sudden, reports are indicating that Ellsworth has pulled out and that the MKW promotion and website put out a statement pointing out and confirming that James Ellsworth will not appear at this weekend's show, but didn't say why during their Eyes on the Prize event, and also during a meet and greet party with other superstars of the promotion. This booking has been in place since February. James Ellsworth informed everyone last night or early in the week, as I'm reading this verbatim, that he will not be traveling to China. This news came after repeated attempts by MKW management to contact Ellsworth over the last 6 days to confirm travel arrangements on behalf of the promotion. And unfortunately, MLK has now apologized to the fans who bought tickets for the intention of seeing James Ellsworth wrestle and meeting him in person during a meet and greet event. MLKW is disappointed by the actions of James Ellsworth, especially at the late nature of the cancellation. So obviously this added fuel to the fire of rumors that Ellsworth more than likely will appear at Money in the Bank at some capacity. I always stand, if you haven't heard it here before, I'll say it now. I'll believe it when I see it. And moving on with that mentality, that feeling, that attitude, if you will, if it happens, you know what? I'll still be surprised, because they've done swerves like this before. They could be anybody, whether WWE in this case or MKW or James Ellsworth himself. He'll probably end up showing at Hogan's Beach House for all we know Sunday night, and nothing happens. But I'll just stick to my guns and believe it when I see James Ellsworth, whether it's even during Carmella's match against Asuka or even the actual women's Money in the Bank ladder match. We'll see. We'll know better then. And kudos to James Ellsworth. If all of this comes true, and back in the good graces of WWE, not that he left on bad terms, but I thought it was a mistake releasing him to begin with. I thought he had a good thing going with Carmella and being his, for lack of a better term, is her servant throughout her tenure, eventually winning the women's championship. But here we are almost a year later, and like everyone else that's left WWE for reasons, they establish themselves elsewhere in the independent level. They build their character, they build their profile, their portfolio actually, and they're probably worth more than when they first left at the first time. So great. I hope this works out. I hope it's true, and I'll still be surprised that James Ellsworth may or may not show up at Money in the Bank this Sunday, which I'll cover here in a few. This story, and we mentioned Dana White earlier. If you remember a few episodes ago, it was all but confirmed that Brock Lesnar was going to return at some point to UFC. I don't remember, well, speaking of things I don't remember, this chair being this noisy, but I don't remember the circumstances as far as what was agreed upon and what was confirmed, other than that Lesnar was returning, period. And the idea was to have a match against John Jones. Now, obviously, all of that fell apart as Jones was suspended, I believe, for the second time for USADA violations, and could not compete in his match versus Daniel Cormier. And now I believe Jones is serving, how many years? 2-3 years suspension, if not more. And, well, point being, whatever ideas or plans they had with Lesnar and Jones are all gone. Not to mention Lesnar even at the time of this quote unquote confirmation that UFC is going to have him back, Lesnar was still sitting out with his suspension, which by now should have been lifted since UFC 200 with his match against Mark Hunt. You got to pronounce that name right. And so, not surprisingly, all those stories and rumors faded away into the night, never to be brought up again. But this week has UFC President Dana White confirming that the promotion is interested in speaking with Brock Lesnar about fighting again once his WWE deal is finished. And we're all looking at post SummerSlam here for that to happen, if not a little bit later. But White also confirmed that it seems like Lesnar's deal will expire in August, which would open him up to a possible return by the end of 2018, depending on how he re-enters the USADA's testing program. One potential fight, this is not going to happen, but one potential fight has been talked about against Jon Jones, although former light heavyweight champion is currently waiting to see how he'll be suspended for the following failed drug test in the wake of his win over Daniel Cormier back in UFC 2014. So it's a toss-up. Daniel Cormier actually has a upcoming match, which a lot of people are very excited / anticipating, between world heavyweight champion Stipe Miocic. And I thought a match like this would never happen, but they've recently, with Conor McGregor crossing those lines of competing in multiple weight divisions and winning multiple weight division championships. So Daniel Cormier, who was actually on an episode of Conan O'Brien this week, says he will be the second man to do so. The world heavyweight champion versus the world light heavyweight champion. And how is that not going to be a huge money maker for anyone in UFC and its sponsors and is what do you call this? I guess the stockholders, if you will, the fans overall. I'll be watching for sure. But as far as Brock Lesnar goes, it's still a long waiting period. Even if Lesnar's just sitting back contemplating how many more days he can add to his really unnecessary long streak of how long he's been Universal Champion, which is nice of WWE to acknowledge earlier in the week as well. But Lesnar's in this business and the other, or both at times, to make money. So if he's the best commodity out there and does nothing but really stay home. I mean, he trains. He's, German suplexing polar bears and chopping down trees with his bare hands up north in Canada when he's not hunting them. I get that, but how many times have we seen UFC competitors in 1 year, whether they're champion or not, appear on multiple pay-per-views or even multiple TV specials such as Fight Night? As beaten up as they might have been from the previous fight weeks or a month or so ago, they still show up because they want to compete. Lesnar's excuse right nowadays: sit home, collect that WWE money for now, wait for that expiration date, and looks like, according to UFC president Dana White, the interest is there for UFC to bring him back and re-sign with them. He showed that he still has it. He still has that spark with the Hunt fight. And of course, that decision was reversed after the fact. But, if you still want to make your money but still look buff, I mean, you can't really have it both ways, guy. And, it is what it is. Make your money, great. I will never argue with anyone making money a certain way that others or many will not agree with. But, just do it the right way, whatever that means. And it's not like you're not aware of what the do's and don'ts are in such ways to make that money. Now, WWE has their excuse, well, he's a part-timer, so we don't test any part-timers. Such a loophole, right? Such a cop-out. But in UFC, technically there aren't any part-timers unless you're on the injury list. And even if you're competing once a year, maybe twice, pushing it for a third time, they know that they get tested before and after the match. And if the samples come back negative, then either the match doesn't happen, or if it comes back negative after the match, then win or lose, it's over. It'll be a no contest. And then pretty much nobody wins, and whatever money you might have been given, you got to give back. So it's not like he's not aware of this. It's not like he needs to cover his ass any more than he has been. And yeah, and you wonder why a lot of people are sick and tired of Brock Lesnar not appearing and making his peekaboo appearances whenever on Raw, and whatever stranglehold or guillotine, headlock or whatever you want to call it that he has on Vince McMahon or creative that appears only when he wants to, which seems to be the case. And Brock Lesnar is unique. He has a specific contract and this and that. Then why the hell did you agree with this, knowing full well how the fans are going to react long term? And is he attraction? Sure. So was Andre the Giant. But hell, how many times does Andre have come on record and on these autobiographies and say, I love to wrestle. I want to be in front of the fans. I want to be in the audience and, show them what I love doing. As time went on, that slowed down, unfortunately, because of his health. What's Brock's excuse? You mean to tell me that he can't make any more money with whatever his annual salary is and get that per television appearance extra? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say how unfair it is, although in many instances it is. But it's just ridiculous that Lesnar thinks he's worth that much money, whatever it is. I don't care if it's $5 million a year or a month or as whenever you decide to show up. But I look at athletes in NBA or MLB, NFL. Yeah, they get off seasons. But you see someone like LeBron James, who's a huge commodity. He's been declared the greatest of all time, one of the greatest, just as great as Michael Jordan, this and that. I'm not inside his head, LeBron James, but I would like to think that it adds some kind of pressure to perform as best as you can under said pressure while being stressed. I mean, it sucked that him and his team had to be swept the way they were, but there's always next time. But at least the point being that he shows up regardless, even after game one. Call it an embarrassment, calling it something that shouldn't have happened from J.R. Smith, whatever the case was, LeBron went out there and played his ass off. I don't know what happened with his other teammates, but they showed some kind of effort. But at the end of the day, it just wasn't enough. So, yeah, I'm comparing basketball to wrestling here. And for these athletes that get paid, and I said this before, if you're worth, or if the promoter or the owner of such company thinks you're worth that much in a six-figure or more, that at least make it your worth. Show us that you're worth that amount by appearing as many times as possible. Even if it's twice a month on a Raw and you skip every other pay-per-view, I personally would have been okay with that. But to create a new championship not too long ago, calling it the Universal title, and others didn't really like it because it was all red. It looked like a fruit roll-up or whatever you want to call it, the Twizzler Championship. In time, it earned respect because of who held it. Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, Finn Balor, who was the first, Goldberg after the fact. And, of course, an argument can be made for Seth Rollins to eventually would win it, which is a rumored match for SummerSlam. But call it the championship being held hostage. Call it, whatever. You know what, Lesnar, you can keep it. The fact that the WWE can create multiple replica championships and have them sent out to the winners of the NBA Finals, the winners of the Stanley Cup Finals, and those things aren't cheap, guys. Multiple replica belts, which I would assume is the deluxe version, and that's, I believe, the closest that it can get to be the real thing, the real deal. And they've had dozens of these things made up for the Golden State Warriors and the the National Capitals, the hockey team. They all received championship replica belts from the WWE. So it's not like they can't afford to make a brand new spanking Universal Championship if Lesnar decides to hold the belt hostage or it's his way to have a better negotiation deal later on if and when his contract expires after SummerSlam. No, well, that's my 2 cents, and I can rant about it all day, but I don't have enough time. There's a few stories about many former WWE superstars getting surgery or just received surgery early in the week, such as Ashley, for example, former WWE superstar, and well, it's not exactly a family show per se, but she's appeared in Playboy, and she went on Instagram earlier this week and went under kidney surgery. Ashley would add later on that it was successful, and she thanked all of her fans for her well wishes. Ed Leslie, the former Brutus the Barber Beefcake, also had surgery for his knee and was deemed also a success, and later on would thank the fans for his or for their get well wishes and good blessings. It's unfortunate, and it even shows no matter where you are in life, as far as how young, how old you are, these things do happen, and it's probably a long-term thing where you may or may not ignore a certain injury. Not that these guys in particular had nagging injuries and that they ignored, but it does happen, and you probably just taking medication to feel better for the time, but eventually it doesn't work anymore. Medication, antibiotics, and unfortunately the last step would be surgery, and you need to take care of that as soon as possible before it gets worse. And who else had surgery this week? There was someone else here. It's probably all spread out through my notes here, but I'll get back to it. Hulk Hogan gave an update with his WWE return, if anything. He had a Q&A session at the Hard Rock Cafe here in Florida, along with Ric Flair, as they seem to be doing this every now once in a while, where Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan get together and they have like a Legends reunion, and a lot of the fans can come out and ask questions, and of course there's a meet and greet later on. So Hogan was asked about his WWE update, and he says, "Yeah, I'm ready. Things are moving in that direction quite quickly, so it's all about execution, timing, the right place, the right time, but things are good." Now, considering or giving Hulk Hogan the benefit of the doubt, no one wants to see Hulk Hogan back in WWE than myself and millions of others around the world. Would it be difficult, considering the circumstance why he left or was terminated or resigned the last time? Maybe. I think, he's done it before. Mark Henry even suggested with an interview, or if you want to call it an interview, him trying to get into a cab in New York City with TMZ, asking about Hulk Hogan and coming back to the WWE. Mark Henry suggested that he should apologize to the locker room, and specifically all African American competitors or athletes in the WWE. And I think that's a fair concept. Whether Hogan has done it in person, over the phone, or texting, which is not the same than doing it face to face. But again, I think that's a fair concept. I think some kind of public apology in the ring is not too far fetched. Again, Hogan has done this all over the media rounds he's taken, over radio interviews he's conducted, that he's apologized for what's happened, what he said, and that's great on his part. But it's funny how many people would divide the audience like that. I mean, you have your social media audience, you have your WWE audience, you have the audience overall, and they're divided in these categories. It really sucks that it has to be seen like that. We can no longer be seen as an audience in general. For example, I don't watch any soaps. I no longer watch reality TV, whatever you want to call it, such as Jerry Springer and Maury Povich. I'm getting hungry now. But I just don't, because it's no longer my cup of tea. Especially that when it's come out, maybe not Maury or in other shows, but when Springer was basically outed that, all of his shows have been scripted and all that shenanigans and wildness. It's just for entertainment purposes. It's not legit, and it kind of expresses where my state of mind was back then, and all I wanted to see was people just beat the crap out of each other on television. But as you get older, you get wiser, and obviously they're still doing something right because they still air on television. But back to my point, where an audience can be divided like that, and because I don't watch any soaps, and I hear about a cast member doing something what Hogan was accused of, and there's evidence of it, I wouldn't sit around and wait for that person's apology, because it sucks. I hope things work out for them, but to me, it won't mean anything, because, I'm just not part of that universe, if you will, or lack for a better term. And again, I hope things really work out. So in the case of Hulk Hogan, he's a household name. He's known worldwide. If you've never seen Hulk Hogan in a wrestling ring, or even in a movie or one or the other, you can ask the youngest fan you can find and say, hey, have you ever heard of Hulk Hogan? 50 years from now, 90s, whatever years from now, decades from this point on, long before Hogan has left this world, and I'm sure I'll be among them too, God forbid anytime soon, and you ask who was or who is Hulk Hogan, the youngest fan will be like, yeah, I know that guy. Yeah, I know who he is. I've heard of him. Just even saying I've heard of him shows the impact this man has left, not only in the pro wrestling industry, but in entertainment, Hollywood, if you will. Yeah, he hasn't done too much recent Hollywood projects, but it's not like he's not recognized or known of the weight that name carries ever since day one, around WrestleMania 1, maybe, if not a little bit sooner, maybe since Rocky 3. But for this man to return anytime soon to the WWE, I say it'll be very interesting. I say I hope it works out. Maybe from the first time around, whether it's on Raw or pay-per-view, that Hulk Hogan steps into the ring, grabs the microphone, and more than likely wait after 5-10 minutes of a standing ovation and say what he has to say. And it's interesting he mentioned the right time and right place, because more than likely, if this was to happen, they would have to pick a specific city, a specific arena where Hulk Hogan's going to get the biggest ovation of the night. Especially if it's advertised about a week in advance, something to look forward to, that's going to pop a huge rating. Not so much because of his appearance, but more so of what he's going to say. And after that, personally, it doesn't matter what they do with him afterwards. If they put him in an angle with Baron Corbin, who's gone bald now, apparently, or put it in an angle with New Day, who knows? But once he makes a speech, and then someone else's music hits, or it's Vince McMahon himself coming out to congratulate him and make him a goodwill ambassador or an agent or something that still has him involved with WWE, and he's making his money, just like the Brock Lesnar story before, I guess that's all that's going to matter. Everyone needs to be happy. And if you listened and remember what Vince McMahon said during the Stone Cold podcast, well, if you're not happy here, then go somewhere else. So let's just have and make everyone happy. And for the sake of Hulk Hogan, which he's doing really well with his beach house and his retail store out in Clearwater, he's doing really well. Not to mention the huge grant he got from that Gawker trial. Maybe that's why he's not rushing, or maybe that's why WWE's not rushing to speak to him anytime soon. Like, dude, you got paid. And enjoy yourself. And he has been. If you've been following Hulk Hogan on social media, he's been living the life he's always have, and more than likely the life you'll continue to be having, I'm not sure if that was even English, but to continue the lifestyle he's had for the rest of his days, hey, more power to the man. And he's happy. The WWE is looking to build another performance center. This according to Bobby Roode, as he had an interview with Little Rock, Arkansas's NBC Channel 4 station, KARK. And he sat down with I didn't catch the reporter's name, but it was in studio. And it was to build up that night's Monday Night Raw. And Bobby Roode said, yes, that he's heard in conversation that the WWE is looking for potential future plans to expand on the performance center at different locations. As of right now, currently the only one is in Orlando, and I can't imagine another one too far away, as NXT and of course the current performance center is so close to each other. And the thing is, if you're chosen to say this new performance center, whenever it happens, it's going to be relocated or rebuilt, or built for the first time, I should say. And let's say in Texas, for example, Dallas. And now there are many WWE legends that live out there that call home. And say you live in Nebraska. So if you're chosen after audition tapes or tryouts, you have to move. You more than likely would have to move, maybe crash with other students at the performance center, or if you have a friend or family, you can crash nearby. But more than likely, you would have to move. Now, if that's the only downside to this, where you got to give up your life to pursue your dreams, well, you definitely have a huge decision to make. And 9 out of 10 times, the choice is made where they make the move, they give it a try. In some cases, it doesn't work out, and you got to go home. Hopefully, they'll keep you in mind for a future run. But honestly, I like this idea in expanding. If they ever expand worldwide as far as performance centers go, I say you can put one somewhere in Asia, maybe somewhere in, well, like they have a huge influence now in the United Kingdom, which I'll talk about in a minute here. And yeah, great idea. Go for it. No, definitely no complaints from me, and hopefully from not too many other people. If the idea is to expand and be what your namesake is, World Wrestling Entertainment, well, then for all intents and purposes, you have to conquer the world. Hopefully many of you have seen the trailer for the upcoming The Hardys Woken documentary that's going to be airing immediately after Money in the Bank this Sunday night. And wow, just the topics that they showed on the trailer itself, I didn't think they'll be too open to it, acknowledging at best, but to get into it in detail was very intriguing. As Jeff Hardy discussed his DWI from a few months ago, and he was very open about it. Matt Hardy was shown about his travels back, with his brother too, Jeff, from last year's WrestleMania, and his journey with his current family. And they were showing video clips of their humble beginnings and their earlier runs in WWE, their previous run in WWE, and in other indie federations. So to me, this looks like it's going to be the most in-depth storytelling from the Hardy Boys. I do have their last, DVD box set before both men departed from WWE almost 10 years ago. Almost. And even then, it was very insightful because Jeff Hardy discussed his TNA briefly, but he discussed his TNA run as he name dropped them a couple of times. And it's in the video, at least on the Jeff Hardy side of the story. And acknowledging the mistakes he made back then, and unfortunately would make similar mistakes later on, leading to his other departure from WWE back to TNA, and only to come back to WWE a year ago with his brother. So I will definitely be staying up late to watch this one. It's a must-see, just going on the trailer itself. Of course, you had Edge and Christian chiming in their thoughts of working with them and traveling with them. So everyone tune into this one. And speaking of Jeff Hardy, Jeff has pleaded guilty to driving while impaired for the incident in Cobos County back in March. According to WB-TV, Hardy was issued a 120-day suspension sentence and fined $300 for court costs. And Hardy will also need to complete an assignment and treatment class and will also turn over his driver's license. Hardy has 120 days to complete 48 hours of court-ordered community service. So I guess there might have been a plea bargain, but it's a slap in the wrist, a good one, that is. Not that I'm implying that the judge was influenced in any way, but the fact that Hardy pleaded guilty, and many others would say otherwise, but I want to believe Hardy has realized his mistakes, and he can no longer be doing this. He's not getting any younger, so hopefully this is a eye-opener, and maybe the WWE saw the same thing that I'm discussing, as almost immediately when Hardy returned this time around, especially after his injury, he's now the United States champion. So if that doesn't speak merit, then I don't know what does. The former Rosa Mendez wants to set the independent scene on fire. As she was talking to Women's Pro Wrestling Weekly, Mendez said that she feels like this is her business, and her business plan is that she wants to conquer the independents. She goes on to say, "I want to dominate the independents and be super over and have incredible 30, 40-minute matches in the independents and show people that I am a great worker and a great performer. As soon as I can say that myself, then I am going to talk to them." Okay, I believe this is what she's referring to, a WWE return. So as soon as I can, I will talk to them. They may talk to me before then, who knows, but I really want to establish myself in the independents before I even step foot in a WWE door again. Now, I mentioned this earlier, where some who are released or resign from WWE, they go elsewhere and they establish themselves and become even more popular, become more worth than what they were when they first left the first time. And I say, even after giving birth to her first child, and I met Rosa Mendez about a year ago, she's such in high spirits. She looks incredibly fit. And hopefully, first I'll have to catch some of her independent shows here, maybe on YouTube. But, she has that spark. She has that fire. And to give an opportunity to her and to others, especially after proving themselves elsewhere, I say, like I always do, why not? And, give her the opportunity again. Even if it's a short-term run, or you keep in NXT for a while, she's doing something that's keeping her busy, and not only that, but doing something that she loves to do. Speaking of which, I should have added this before in my Hogan story, but Francis Lawrence, director of The Hunger Games, I Am Legend, just to name a few, is slated to direct the upcoming film Conspiracy, which is one of two films based on the Hulk Hogan versus Gawker trial. Lawrence is being brought in as director and producer of the film from Black Rock Productions. The book will be based on Ryan Holiday's Conspiracy, and the script is being written by Charles Randolph. So this is interesting because Netflix released a documentary style film maybe about a couple of months after the trial was over with, and it openly discussed what took place during the Hogan versus Gawker trial, and openly discussing about, in general, the freedom that the public has when it comes to, say, leaked videos in this case, and audio that's leaked and you're caught saying something you probably shouldn't be saying, and how the media handles them for the good and the bad. It's quite intriguing. If you haven't seen it already, I'll give it a look. The documentary on Netflix, Hulk Hogan versus Gawker, and to have a 2-part film, not another documentary, not really a movie, but a film based on this. Didn't specify more details as far as if someone else as an actor, for example, is going to play Hulk Hogan, or any other actors portraying individuals from Gawker, and so on and so forth. So everything's in a pre-production stages. So it will take some time to have any more information shared to the world about this, but I'm not sure about this one. I mean, we've seen it already for something else like this so soon and so similar from what we have on Netflix to come out at some point. You know, hopefully it's not overkill, but if it's showing something different that we're not aware of, or maybe something that the documentary left out, then maybe I'll personally give it a chance. But otherwise, hopefully it's not a waste of time for the studios involved and all those behind the scenes, and to have this thing off the ground anytime soon. The LA Times reported that UFC 225 supposedly had less than 150,000 pay-per-view buys. Many fans were predicting that it would at least hit the 300 mark. And while the pay-per-view business has been struggling in many different sports, UFC has clearly was hoping for the big numbers, courtesy of their decision to put CM Punk on the main card. I mean, pay-per-view has been hit and miss lately on many fronts. On-demand pay-per-view, as far as, let's say, movies go, it's not on high praise at the moment, mainly because of other streaming outlets out there, that whether it's easier or whether it's, lighter on the wallet, who knows? But it's a dying breed, and it has been for some time now. Hence why so many companies such as UFC and WWE have their own network for their streaming purposes. And again, it is lighter on the wallet, so it will suck to see something that a lot of us were there to see the dawning of, the pay-per-view generation, not only for sports and events, but for movies that just were in theaters not too long ago, and you can order them on pay-per-view at the time for probably the same amount you will spend on a movie ticket. But yeah, it's just gotten out of control price-wise. Even now, if you want to spend, like $60 for a standard definition version of an event, if you want HD, it's almost twice that amount. So yeah, I mean, you got to pick your battles, I guess, in this one. But I would like to see it go away. At least I would like to see pay-per-view to be an option. For example, to be an exclusive way to watch an event. Of course, you would have to make arrangements and agreements with said companies. But if UFC, for example, doesn't want to carry UFC 300, and the only way to watch it is you got to order it on pay-per-view. You won't see it on Fight Pass or anywhere else. It's only on pay-per-view. And only after it airs would it be available on Fight Pass and so on and so forth. So I think that'll be the only way. Just like when closed circuit television was a thing and then pay-per-view was just coming out. You have to choose or just wait for the results. But nowadays people find their ways to watch their events. Maybe not the right way, but they watch it regardless, and that's why you have all these spoilers online so fast. But as far as assuming that there were going to be 300,000 or more buys of the decision to have CM Punk on the main card, that's just unfair criticism. That was a huge speculation that, well, CM Punk's on the main card, no matter what order the fights are, that should draw in more viewers, not to mention it's in his hometown. That's totally unfair. It is what it is, and the pay-per-view has been dying out even before Punk returned for his second fight. And was CM Punk enough of a drawing name or a big name to get the attention of more potential buyers? Maybe, maybe not. Or maybe it was a scheduling conflict with others. I mean, I'm not trying to give excuses, but the fact that that's what the assumption is, then you have to be wrong. There have been previous examples of this, and whether it was because Ronda Rousey wasn't on the card, or Conor McGregor, Daniel Cormier, other big names, and the numbers would show between one pay-per-view to the other within 1 or 2 months apart, and the numbers have gone up and down for UFC. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me at the moment, but going back and for curiosity's sake, watch the listings of the buy rates. Yeah, they've been 150. They at lower times even less than this. I think the biggest number was maybe 210,000 in recent memory. So it has its moments. Maybe the main event wasn't as strong, but it was entertaining. And it is what it is. But to assume that was the reason why, blame it on Punk in so many words, then no, I completely disagree with that. But on the CM Punk story here, I'd like to give a special shout out to WWE for acknowledging the fact that CM Punk is still the longest reigning WWE champion at 434 days. As of this recording, Brock Lesnar stands at 439 days as Universal Champion. Now, there was a graph on Twitter when WWE put this out earlier in the week. They didn't say that Punk was not the longest reigning champion, or that Lesnar is or wasn't, but rather it was categorized where the Universal Champion, in the history of the Universal Championship so far, the longest reigning champion is Brock Lesnar. In the history of the WWE Championship, at this moment, it's CM Punk with 434 days, and they added Pete Dunne at 391 days as of this recording, and Dean Ambrose at 351 days as United States champion. So I would like to think, if it's not too far-fetched, but I would like to think that this was their way of, despite our differences and losing the trial, at least the WWE doctor did, losing the trial to Punk last week before his fight. Or maybe just coincidence and the timing of it, because people are asking, and there are a lot of memes out there even before this little graph came out from WWE acknowledging CM Punk. Not that he's any kind of a pest or anything. Punk, I said it last week, Punk's moving on with his life. It is what it is. So you can bash him all you want, but, it's whatever he does and decides to do with himself and his wife, AJ. That's what really counts to him, of what's going to make him happy. And I'm sure he's heard or has been told about all the criticism throughout the years since he left and the shots they've taken towards him. Just let the man live his life. MMA may not be his thing, but I really don't want to get into this until the end. But here we are. Let the man live his life. So he lost 2 matches in his UFC career, and MMA may not be his thing, if it ever was. I mean, I don't know, but I know it's what he wanted to do. He wanted to try it, and this was the end result. Now, if Dana White is pushing him to, you might want to reconsider or hang it up now, I mean, they're still going to be friends. Had it not been for Dana White and others that Punk knew and still knows in the UFC, this opportunity may not have even happened. But the fact that the man got in there, got his ass whooped the first time around, hell, the beating this time around with Mike Jackson, I mean, if you haven't seen Punk's face, he looks like the end result of Rocky Balboa beating the crap out of that piece of meat while training for Apollo Creed. And I don't want to say I feel bad for the man. I don't know him personally. And knowing how we know CM Punk through other people's point of view, that he'll probably be dismissive of some of the comments we make and some of the feelings we have towards him. I mean, well, that's his prerogative, how he wants to feel, but it won't stop to have someone like me express how I feel. But I don't want to say I feel bad for the man. If anything, I feel happy for him that he's trying something, that he's done something that he thought he could do, probably still can. And who's anyone to say you should stop this? Who's to say anyone to say you shouldn't do this anymore? He's going to do what he wants to do because he thinks he could do it. So let the man be. Whether it's in UFC, whether he sticks to his word and never again step back into a pro wrestling ring anywhere, then so be it. If he's not going to be all in, then so be it. You know, I mean, why give this man so much criticism and such a hard time every time he's been asked the question and you don't like the answer? But you're still curious to see what he's going to say. You're still curious to see, you know, when is the next time he's going to show up? You know, who's he going to fight next? Is there going to be another meet and greet that he rarely does, if ever? You're still there. You still want to pursue and find out these dates and locations about him. But when he gives you an answer you don't want to hear, like, freaking Punk, man. He's saying no. He's turned his back on the fans and this and that. The same fans that he wants to know all about his life if he doesn't speak out as much on Twitter anymore. Maybe he's training. Maybe he's watching a movie. Maybe he's watching or taking his dog for a walk. Maybe spending some special time with his wife. You know, if you don't have a wife and you don't have a dog or a home of your own, or don't train at all, but still complain about when this man says something you don't want to hear, then you have no life. Honestly, you have no life. Try half the things that he's done or anyone else that you've admired throughout the years growing up. I know I have. I've tried. You know, since you think I'm bashing some of you guys, I'd rather not be, but the ones that just consistently do this on a regular basis just need to stop. Yeah, the haters. Yeah, the naysayers, whatever you want to call yourselves. In the sense of how I tried, well, I've gone out to the Watson Moment School. And what I try to do there is a documentary. And you know what? I'm still working on that. Thanks to Afa and his family and crew. I reached out to the WWN out in Largo, Florida. And I ended up doing a news package deal with them. And guess what? They posted that on their Facebook page. So what's your excuse? Right now I have a part-time job with a talk show company out in what's it called, Brennington, which got to be there as soon as I'm done here recording this and then post it up on my YouTube page. Point there is that I am trying. I've actually stepped into a ring in Queens, New York called the Gladiator Championship Wrestling. It may not be around anymore, but I've actually trained with Vladimir Kozlov before he was Vladimir Kozlov. I've trained with Thunderbolt before he passed away. I trained with Cobra, who was a longtime partner of Savio Vega from Puerto Rico. So if you're thinking or wondering, well, so what happened? Well, injuries built up. And at this point in my life, I may or may not ever try it again because I don't want to risk making things worse for myself. And it's unfortunate because I still follow it. Obviously, I'm here talking about it. So for anyone that complains and nags or bitches about someone else's response and it's not something you don't want to hear, unless you've been in that man's shoes or anyone else that's walked among them, if you will, the very same thing you've been admiring for so long as a child, if not younger, and you still follow it and you still wanted to have it your way, you are completely wrong and have a look at life that if it doesn't work out for you, you're just going to kick the first stone you see and pout on your way home. So hopefully someone who's listening to this may want to reconsider their lives. Hopefully you're educated enough and have something to fall back on. Because if you don't have an idea for a career on whatever it is that makes you happy, whatever it is that's going to make the money to have that income to keep the roof over your head and keep paying the bills, you really need to reevaluate yourself and your life and not just complain about what others say and you don't like the answer. Like, I shrub it off personally, and because I don't know that individual personally, it is what it is. I got to worry about myself, and we move on. Showtime Boxing and NXT TakeOver has Mauro Ranallo in its scheduling conflict, unfortunately. And Mauro Ranallo will not be part of the broadcast team during TakeOver Chicago. Mauro tweeted out, "I'm blessed to have more than one job. Unfortunately, dates may conflict. Off to Dallas for a Showtime Boxing tripleheader. That means I won't be in Chicago for NXT TakeOver. You'll be in good hands with Vic Joseph, Nigel McGuinness, and Percy Watson." It was only a matter of time before something like this happens, and Mauro Ranallo also does play-by-play for Bellator, and they're usually on a Friday nights and on occasion on Saturdays, but the last time they won on a Saturday, I don't remember Mauro Ranallo being on the broadcast team. But it does happen, and he's pointing out, here's a good example. Here's a man that's doing what he loves to do, which is broadcast journalism and calling the fights he sees in front of him. The man has 3 jobs that we know of: Showtime, NXT, and Bellator. To say that the man is busy is an understatement. And what he brings to the table, in this case the commentary table, speaks volume. And the ones that have signed him up for each respective company, they are fully aware of this. And I got to take my hat off to Mauro Ranallo. His documentary is debuting really soon, and he's on cloud 9. And I wish nothing but the best for Mauro Ranallo for this, Showtime Boxing, NXT, and Bellator and beyond, because he's been through a lot. He shared a lot of that stories, which I know in some cases people think that he shouldn't have, but he opened up to it, and he's not, he's honest about it. He has no regrets about sharing his stories. So more power to the man. WWE aired a YouTube video first on their network, and then later on they posted on their YouTube channel a brief video of Kenny Omega when he was down in Deep South Wrestling, an old territory of the WWE, before everyone eventually transferred over to OVW. But it was a promo shoot of Kenny Omega, and the internet was, I guess the ones that weren't aware of this, but the internet nearly blew up because WWE was acknowledging Kenny Omega. But more so, and let's not read too much into this because we're going to repeat January all over again for the past couple of years. Is Kenny Omega going to jump over? Is Kenny Omega going to WWE? Is this or that? The man just became World Heavyweight Champion for New Japan Pro Wrestling, and we're about halfway through the year now. Can things change? Sure. But for now, let's not speculate that this means anything other than WWE acknowledging a tremendous talent from around the world, and that at some point or another, they've had him under their umbrella, and for reasons that they're aware of or that they know, things didn't work out, and it is what it is. But more so than his Deep South Wrestling connection and appearance, they were also hyping up the upcoming E3 event, which is basically a Comic-Con for video games for those who don't know, and basically a 6-man tag team match, but it won't be held in the ring. It will be held either on a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One, where on one side you have all members of the New Day, Kofi Kingston, Big E, and Xavier Woods, taking on the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega in a Street Fighter V match. That alone is mind-boggling because you have 2 well-known promotional. Well, let me try that again. You have 2 separate promotions, and they're coming together for this one amazing event, E3, and that's a separate audience that's talked about before. And not only that, but it's going to bring in the wrestling community as well. Just the visual, the fact, even if they're not going to wrestle, even if they do as much as a selfie, but the fact that you got New Japan or Ring of Honor, what have you, talent doing something with WWE talent at anything. They could be playing golf and people will still tune in if that was properly promoted on their network or for a streaming video. And I say they should do more of this. And if they keep it on the internet as they are now, that's going to draw a separate kind of audience. That's going to draw, viewerships and how many comments you can get out of it, how many likes and this and that, because apparently that also builds revenue as well. And what a great concept. I think they've done something like this before, but nothing at this scale, as there are more than 2 superstars involved. And yeah, I can't wait to see this. I didn't catch the date of this because it's an all weekend thing, E3 that is. And hopefully, again, they stream this somewhere and we can all enjoy the shenanigans and the horse playing between New Day and Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. I wonder if Chris Jericho will make a cameo. That'd be interesting. So before I get into the Raw and SmackDown review here of the week, both shows had their go-home shows for this Sunday's Money in the Bank, as there will be 2 ladder matches, one for the women, one for the men, all vying for that contract that is good for 1 year for any championship that they see fit to go after and cash in. We also have NXT TakeOver Chicago, and really quite an impressive lineup here, and one of the best ones in recent memory. I mean, all NXT takeovers have been amazing. Of course, when it comes to the call-ups to the main roster, there's got to be a lot of adjustments, obviously. There has to be a decision made to see who's going to be the next top star in NXT in this case. But for the past year, all these names that I'm going to mention here have really stepped it up, have really deserved where they are now, whether it's a challenger or a champion, or even that's just an ordinary competitor. They've all deserved their spots here. And hopefully maybe TakeOver can expand to maybe 3 hours, if it's not too much to ask. 2.5 for sure, but we'll see how they play out this one in Chicago. So in no particular order, we have the NXT Tag Team Champions of the Undisputed Era taking on Owen Lorcan and Danny Burch. You will have Ricochet taking on the Velvet Team Dream. For the Women's NXT Championship, Shayna Baszler defends against Nikki Cross. Johnny Gargano takes on Tommaso Ciampa, in a Chicago street fight, which I think this will be the show stealer. These guys always perform at 110%. I would love to see them, if it's not too scary, see them perform at 125% and more. These guys just tear down the house every single time they get together. If they were amazing as tag teams, they're almost in pro wrestling god mode when it comes to one-on-one competition. And for the NXT Championship, we have Aleister Black defending against Lars Sullivan. Big man. Whew. I always pull for the underdogs in any kind of events, pay-per-view, Super Bowl, NBA Finals, WrestleMania, what have you. And that's basically my call, my predictions, if you will. Whoever the underdog is in these matches is who I'm going to root for personally. Curious to see how that Ricochet Velvet Team Dream match is going to play out. Also, between the NXT Women's Championship, as Nikki Cross has really been stepping it up. Fortunately, she was not called up to the main roster as the rest of Sanity was. But judging on things so far, it doesn't even seem like even Sanity was called up to the main roster. They have yet to debut. Did you notice that? Sanity was called up during the draft. That's what I'm calling it, the draft. And they have yet to be seen ever since. Authors of Pain, they were called up, and within a matter of a couple of weeks, they've all but disappeared. I don't even know, and I don't think I've even seen them perform at a house show. Sanity did. They appeared. They made their debut, so to speak, at a house show a couple of weeks ago, and we all assumed that they would appear that week's SmackDown, and they didn't. We're still waiting. But NXT TakeOver at Chicago is definitely going to be one of those eyes glued to the TV set, in my case, and not leave the room for anything. I'll probably have a snack, a bag of nachos or something, but I'm definitely watching this from start to finish. So before I get into the Money in the Bank rundown, let me just really quickly run through the results of this week's Raw and SmackDown go-home shows. As Raw opened up with the men and women of Raw who will be participating in the Money in the Bank ladder matches. Then you have Kurt Angle coming out mentioning that this will be the greatest match in WWE history, only to have arguing by Baron Corbin starting a new hairdo, and there's video footage of this happening as he came to the arena and had his hair cut in front of the cameras. And all of this led to everyone in the ring talking a lot of smack. Kevin Owens had probably the best lines of the night, asking if the hanging of the briefcase is going to be held even higher because of the disadvantage that everyone else has against Braun Strowman, only for Angle to say no, the level of the briefcase will be the same for everyone regardless of height, and that just pissed off Kevin Owens. All this, you just had to see it to chuckle about this. Kevin Owens is the best talker right now as far as the heels go on Raw. And this all led to two separate fatal four-ways, one for the women, one for the men later on in the show. And I got to say, the first fatal four-way with the women, that was an amazing, amazing match. And by the way, Alexa Bliss and Natalya, they've been medically cleared. If you remember last week, they both had leg injuries in their matches on Raw, only to be medically cleared this week and still be allowed to compete in Money in the Bank. Maybe they'll bring it up again and swipe them out with someone else, if not both, one of them for sure, and have someone that we're not thinking of right now, because Bayley's right now out of the picture as far as the Money in the Bank match goes. So we'll see. But the women's match, the Fatal 4-Way women's match was amazing, as Alexa Bliss, Natalya, Sasha Banks, and Ember Moon all fought with each other. It was a great match, like I said, and Natalya wins with a sharpshooter over Alexa Bliss. Ironically, the two injured women in this angle here. Then we see Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler basically defeat Breezango in a squash match. It was just, I guess a bathroom break match. Only to cut a promo and letting everyone know that they're going to be a tag team for quite some time. Hopefully that settles some of the rumor makers that they're eventually going to break away. But I think, I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I think that's only going to happen after they get their first tag team title opportunity. Maybe the second, but in that time frame, I think that's when they're going to break away. So hopefully they won't do that anytime soon, because I think they work great together. Something similar to the days of Shawn Michaels and Diesel, very similar, ironically. And McIntyre and Diesel with the long black slick hair, and of course, who hasn't compared Dolph Ziggler to Shawn Michaels in the past few years? So just coincidence here, but still amazing. We were spared not having Roman Reigns take on Jinder Mahal here, because chances are what we would have seen on Raw, we would have ended up seeing this Sunday at Money in the Bank. But I'll get to that in a bit. So no Roman Reigns versus Jinder Mahal twice in a week. Instead, it was Samir Singh that was sacrificed with a sacrificial lamb to Roman Reigns in an impromptu match. And Roman just, did all his high spots, spears, going for a Superman punch, only for Jinder to step in and causing a DQ. And Jinder will lay him out with a Colossus, looking strong here going into his match with Roman Reigns this Sunday. The B team took on Heath Slater and Rhino. B team would get the win, only to have the leaders of Worlds come out and cut their promo, setting up the Money in the Bank tag team title match. Everyone, including myself, are curious to see how Bo Dallas and Bray Wyatt are going to interact. We've seen this before, but it's been a while, and how and why Bo was never introduced as another member of the Wyatt family at that time, or even if it was short term, because we never got to see who would have been Sister Abigail. I mean, yeah, there was an idea that Bray was going to be in drag at one time, but he got sick and was replaced by AJ Styles to take on Finn Balor. So maybe it was a blessing in disguise, but hopefully Bo Dallas later on, if at least before his career is over, that he has some kind of interaction with his brother. Maybe not as a tag team, they can still be individuals, but acknowledge the fact that there are brothers, but at some point they decided to go separate ways and still end up being tag team champions. Elias was in the ring, singing as always. And he pulls out a custom-made guitar, and I believe it was spray painted on, or airbrushed, I should say, and having the Intercontinental Championship on it, that it was a gift given to him by John Mayer for reasons, sure. Only to have Seth Rollins come out and throw Elias out of the ring, making a stiff-looking bump on the edge of the ring apron as he was thrown over the top rope, and only to have Seth Rollins destroy the guitar, cutting on the promo for the upcoming Money in the Bank ladder match. I'm sorry, not a ladder match, but Intercontinental title match this Sunday. Bayley took on Ruby Riott in another great women's match here. Bayley was distracted by Liv Morgan and Sarah Logan, only to have to have Ruby Riott hit her right kick for the win, and they branded Bayley a la NWO style, except no spray can here. It was lipstick. And I guess this is their thing now, where the Riott Squad brands you with a huge lipstick and just spells out the letter R. You've been branded by the Riott Squad. Nia Jax had a face-to-face with Ronda Rousey. Good stuff here. Some more improved stuff from Ronda Rousey, as she's not that good at commentating, but I guess that's done by design. But when it comes to talking smack on a promo, Ronda held her own, got a good pop out of it, and Nia still deciding, I guess, whether she's going to be a heel in this. But they got face to face, they got physical, and while Nia was trying to be the dominant one here, Ronda was applying her armbar. Nia tried to escape, but Ronda Rousey would apply the pressure and causing Nia to tap out. So is this an indication of what's going to happen this Sunday? And again, having Ronda enter the UFC Hall of Fame Modern's Wing as the Raw Women's Champion. Again, for visual purposes and I guess some bragging rights, I wouldn't mind seeing that. But, it was a long road for Nia Jax to be where she is now, and just to take it off of her in a short amount of time, it's questionable for me, but I'm not the one booking this stuff. No Way Jose will take on Kurt Hawkins. And apparently someone's been keeping track of Kurt Hawkins' losing streak, as it's over 200 at this point, if not more. And with their connection now with ESPN, even they covered it. So I guess they're going to have to add one more to that blemish record, as No Way Jose defeats Hawkins here, as the referee was counting his 10 count, as Hawkins did not appear during his announcement. No Way Jose was already in the ring, but he came out with his conga line, or his rosebuds, if you will. And it turns out that one of the rosebuds or conga line members was Kurt Hawkins in disguise. Tried to jump it from behind, and having No Way Jose counter into the win. And once again, the losing streak continues. This is done differently than who was that before that had a similar losing streak? I can't, name escapes me. But the point being that this is more entertaining. I mean, last week he was offering free tacos for everyone, and that was ruined. And now try a sneak attack as being dressed as one of his rosebuds didn't work out either. So now it's turning to one of those what's Kurt Hawkins going to do next kind of thing. Here's something that should have the mentality of what they're going to do next, but I don't know. I really don't know about this one, but apparently they revived NXT Season 1 as Sami Zayn had a military obstacle course set up throughout the ring and up and down the ramp for Bobby Lashley for reasons after questioning Lashley's service in the military a week ago and talking about his military career. And I guess you got to get heat somewhere somehow, but this was written for Sami Zayn to pull it off as such. But anywho, Sami Zayn took way too long explaining the situation, and poor Renee Young was out there in the middle of all this. Why, I have no idea, but talking to Zayn, but Zayn just bragged on and about the obstacle course, questioning Bobby Lashley's integrity. Lashley eventually comes out and cuts a little interview with Renee Young on top of the rampway. But again, I don't think it was really necessary for her to be there, but it is what it is. Of course, in about 50 seconds or so, Lashley runs through the obstacle course. Look at it, seemed like it was very easy to do. And surprise, only to have Sami Zayn jumping from behind at the end, beating the crap out of him and leaving him laying. Of course, speculating that their match at Money in the Bank, that Bobby Lashley will make short work of Sami Zayn. And in the main event, we had the other fatal four-way. This time it was the men, Braun Strowman versus Finn Balor versus Kevin Owens versus Bobby Roode. Strowman would finish it off with a running power slam with Kevin Owens on top of a ladder, which looked kind of stiff, but knowing that these ladders are gimmicks, so it didn't look as bad. Hopefully it didn't feel as bad. But then again, you got this 300-pounder landing on you and on one end, and you got the ladder on the other. So I think they're really, really trying to hide the fact that their ladders are gimmicked. So they've been working on the camera angles and the zooming in and zooming out to make sure that it's not obvious, because they're gonna try their hardest, they being the commentators, that these ladders are made of metal and the solid steel, and that it hurts, and it really hurts. Then we have SmackDown opening up with Paige in the ring with all the SmackDown women. They're going to be participating in the SmackDown ladder match. Well, the women's ladder match, I should say, on the pay-per-view of Lana, Naomi, Becky Lynch, and Charlotte, only to have the Iconics come out and, of course, make fun of everyone, as they do. And then you have Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose talk some more smack, all this leading to a brawl in the aisleway. And, of course, even myself, and I got to give WWE Creative, at least on SmackDown side, a little credit for this, that, okay, you got me, where similar to Raw, you would have another fatal four-way women's match, but they didn't. Instead, during the show, Paige would talk to Asuka and then eventually talk to Carmella, the women's champion, and include them in the match. So it will now be a 10 women's tag team match. Then again, let me backtrack here. It wasn't going to be a fatal four-way to begin with, but it was going to be a predictable at the time, eight women's tag team match, but it was turned into a 10 women's tag team match. So kudos, and yeah, you got me and many others on that one. So good job there. A great match between Daniel Bryan and Shelton Benjamin, as both men were working the other's leg, counter after counter. One point, Shelton Benjamin, it looked like he legit sprained his knee at one point, but it was just doing a really well sell job here. And at the end, after countering the yes lock, Bryan would win with a submission with a heel hook on Shelton Benjamin, tapping him out. No interference from Big Cass or run-in during the match, which was quite interesting. I guess they're going to hold that off for Money in the Bank, as they will have their one-on-one match. Since SmackDown was in Memphis, of course, it makes sense to acknowledge Hall of Famer Jerry the King Lawler, as he took the old Mean Gene Okerlund stand here to an interview with AJ Styles, the WWE champion. I guess that's going to be a SmackDown thing, where at least one interview during the show, you will have the camera set up by the aisleway on the old Mean Gene spot. A nice throwback and very clever usage of that. So, of course, AJ Styles, unfortunately, this was really underwhelming, as AJ Styles was just out there to promote his championship match with Shinsuke Nakamura at Money in the Bank, and said his usual stick, and hopefully this time he wore a cup, who knows. But there wasn't much to this spot here, this segment. Samoa Joe will take on Rusev as special guest referee, The Miz. Another good match here. Miz was backstage, I guess, sharpening his acting skills. Happens to be as a referee, and Paige stops by and was suspicious of The Miz, that the only reason why he wants to be in the match or be involved with it is so he can get back at the guys that beat him down the week before. But Paige still gave him the opportunity as special guest referee. So here we have a good match between these two heavyweights. And Rusev would eventually get the win over Joe. Then he lays out Joe with a ladder. And from behind, The Miz will perform his skull-crushing finale. Will climb up to the top, get the briefcase, and opens up said briefcase near the commentating table and notice it's full of pancakes. I wonder who did that. And then we cut backstage to the locker room. Wherever you see all members of the New Days just laughing their heads off, knowing that they got to the Miz. That it's an ongoing gimmick at this point where New Day has always been getting the leg up over the Miz every week now, from trying to find out which member of the New Day is going to compete in Money in the Bank to just really screw with him, the Miz, that is. And that kind of rhymed. So the way Miz sold it here just goes to show how a long way he has come. Had this been, Tough Enough, the $1 million Tough Enough, and if we had that Miz of back then now, it probably would not have gone over the way it did, and not even a shot in hell or in the dark could have been pulled off by the previous Miz. But today's Miz is so amazing. He's awesome, as he says, and it worked out here, and the sell job was amazing. And then we saw a match that many of us didn't think we'll see, if ever, even though they were both under the umbrella now. But I was excited to see this. Shinsuke Nakamura taking on Jeff Hardy in a non-title match. And at one point, it looks like Jeff really injured his lower back, diving out of the off the apron, I should say, onto the ring floor on Shinsuke. And from that point on, he was just selling his lower back, his lower rib cage. And going back to that spot, I'm either the land. Sometimes when you land, you don't think about it much, but you eventually do some damage in a part of the body you didn't think you would have, depending how you landed. But Jeff sold it so well that I was convinced, like, where was the botch, or where was the bad lying? I couldn't tell. It wasn't until after he got back in the ring and was trying to. Shinsuke was doing a reversal of an Irish whip, and then you see Jeff Hardy just collapse, like, oh crap, what's going on here? See, things like that make you question the legitimacy of the injury, the sell, how well you can do it, and makes you question even the best of analysis. I guess I consider myself one now. Then they got you, and for the better, because you thought that the man was legit injured, and I thought I was. I thought that Jeff was, and he sold it really well. Only for Shinsuke to once again go low and punt kick. Was it a kick or an uppercut for him? But either way, it was a low blow from Shinsuke, causing the DQ. And as set up for this Sunday, Shinsuke counted to 10 as they're going to have a last man standing match for the WWE Championship against AJ Styles. So this leads into the main event of a 10-women tag team match. Quite a mouthful here. Everyone I mentioned earlier, and of course the addition of Asuka on the babyface team and champion Carmella on the heel team. Everyone had the chance and opportunity to shine here, only for the end to see Asuka place Carmella in her Asuka lock, a la the crossface chicken wing, and make the champion tap out. And I thought it was foreshadowing that maybe, but now we have the possibility of James Ellsworth, assuming that's if and when or where he's going to interfere this Sunday, or if it's during the women's ladder match. We don't know, but I like when they do this. They leave you questioning, and if you do follow rumors or stories online of possibilities of this and that, if they keep you guessing and it's not too obvious or predictable, then we need more of that. Not so many swerves like they used to do back in the day during the Attitude Era, because after a while, swerves became predictable and it wasn't as entertaining. But now I see they have an opportunity, they being the creative team, where they don't have sticks up their bungholes or the heads up there sometimes, because apparently there's plenty of room for that, to leave us guessing. At the best, leave us guessing, where the ending of SmackDown this week, was it foreshadowing? And oh, by the way, there are rumors about this guy coming back. Would that play any part, if any? We'll find out this Sunday. And speaking of which, the rundown is as follows. As I tried to mention it during the Raw and SmackDown reviews, Daniel Bryan will take on Big Cass. Intercontinental Champion Seth Rollins will defend against Elias. Bobby Lashley goes one-on-one with Sami Zayn. For the SmackDown Tag Team Championships, the Bludgeon Brothers will defend against the Good Brothers of Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. That will be in a kickoff, by the way. Roman Reigns will take on Jinder Mahal. For the SmackDown Women's Championship, Carmella defends against Asuka. Raw Women's Champion Nia Jax will go one-on-one with Ronda Rousey for the title. And, of course, you have the two main event, well, not main event, but we'll see how they position these matches. But first off, you got the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match. Participants include Lana, Natalya, Alexa Bliss, excuse me, Charlotte Flair, Ember Moon, Bayley, Naomi, and Sasha Banks. Who are the underdogs here? Well, it's hard to say, but it's really hard to say. I mean, they've all been champions at one point or another, with the exception of Lana. But moving on, I really can't pick a winner here. Then you have the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, including Samoa Joe, Kevin Owens, Bobby Roode, Braun Strowman, The Miz, Rusev, Finn Balor, and a member of the New Day, which many suggested and predicted that decision won't come until the actual Money in the Bank event, and it will either be Kofi Kingston, Big E, or Xavier Woods. I say just to make everyone happy and go a little different way, let Xavier Woods have his moment. And in the main event for the WWE Championship, AJ Styles defends against Shinsuke Nakamura in a last man standing match where you incapacitate your opponent to a point where they can no longer answer a referee's 10 count, and they don't have to be necessarily unconscious, but unable to stand on their own 2 feet before the count of 10. And the last man standing will be the winner and WWE champion. Shinsuke has to take this one. If anyone wants to take his heel turn as serious as they want him to, and Shinsuke has been playing like this real troll, if you will, and I hope it's here. I really hope it's here because what do you do after this? You know, SummerSlam's coming up real soon. Assuming that AJ Styles is still champion, there hasn't been no one else really being built up as a possible threat or contender for the title. They've just been stuck with Shinsuke and AJ since WrestleMania, or better yet, since the Greatest Royal Rumble. And even then was like, you know, what were they thinking? I mean, there are better ways to do a no decision or no contest finish with just not always relying on someone getting kicked in the balls all the time. Or in some cases, you know, the double kick to the sack. But hopefully they got to come up with something. And if that something is having Shinsuke win the championship over AJ Styles this time around, then great. Then you have a reason to invoke AJ Styles rematch clause, maybe leading into SummerSlam, or maybe an episode of SmackDown as a giveaway, because they will take a different route for SummerSlam. But we'll see. And I really hope, for the sake of having Shinsuke as a legit heel-turned champion, it's got to be now. Otherwise, I'm just going to give up on this angle and, well, you decide whatever you want to do with him. And Shinsuke ends up being champion by Survivor Series. And for me, it'd be too late, personally. But that is what it is. So I hope this episode of the JM Report has been insightful. I know I had to share a lot of stories here. And it's been a while since I've done an episode that's gone this long. I'm not complaining, but, you know, it's just sometimes some weeks are slower than others. But this week I just had a lot of stories, and I'm trying to include now reviews of Raw and SmackDown for the week and a rundown of upcoming pay-per-views such as TakeOver and Money in Bank in this case. So, everyone, thank you very much for joining in. Thank you for listening up to this point. I want to wish everyone out there a happy Father's Day this weekend. And what better way, if you're a wrestling fan, that is, to spend time with Dad watching Money in the Bank this Sunday night. And I will be back next time with the JM Report with the results, the outcomes, the backlash, what have you, of Money in the Bank and TakeOver, and of course the news of the week. Hopefully some more better news and some enlightening news. Not that there haven't been too many this week, but you got to have a level playing field, I guess. But that's just me, if I'm not asking for too much. So thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, click that like button, leave a comment below. If there's anything you want me to cover, just suggest it down in the comment section, and I'll do my best to cover it